One, two, three. Good evening and welcome. This is our Wednesday, December 18th, 2024 council meeting. I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jody, will you call the roll, please?
Counselor Cushing,
Here.
Counselor Shu,
Here.
Counselor Anderson,
Here.
and Council Chair Seibert.
Here. Order number 24-121 is act on the request for an executive session pursuant to Title 36 of the MRSA 3841-2 for the purposes of deliberating one hardship poverty tax abatement case, which is case number 2024-001, and to come back to public session to take action on the above mentioned hardship poverty tax abatement case. Tom, do you have anything you'd like to say, or are we all set?
I will just say, this is a bit irregular by statute, frankly. These deliberations by statute are done in executive session. As was mentioned in the introduction, the council will, if they so choose, take action immediately following that executive session in public session. That action will be devoid of any identifiers, names, or otherwise. Again, the case number will be referenced. But again, these are by statute deemed to be acceptable and required in executive session.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Do we deliberate publicly if we come back to vote, or do we just vote?
No, interestingly, this is one of the areas that you're exclusively allowed to do your deliberations in private. You need to cast your vote in public, however. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Tom? Okay, with that, do I have a motion to go into an executive?
So
session?
moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, we will return to public session. Hi, everybody, and welcome. We are just returning from an executive session. At this point, we need to act on order number 24-121. And so at this point, I will motion to grant an abatement pursuant to Title 36 MRSA 8412 in the tax abatement case number 2024-001. Go ahead,
Second,
second. There's not any discussion necessary. I don't think at this point we were legally allowed to deliberate in executive session. And so at this point, I will call the vote. All those in favor? 2? Are you in favor? Okay, and then all of those opposed. I'll show that as 3 opposed, and the motion fails. Thank you. At this point, we are on to order number 24-122, a 5:30 public hearing between the town council and the planning board to discuss the proposed contract zone for the South Portland Housing Development Corporation for the development of multifamily housing. The development is located at 578 US Route 1, Assessor's Map U034, Lot 1. And so at this point, I'd like to invite the applicant and the planning board to kind of join us at the tables. Thank you all for being here. And before we get started, I'll go ahead and do a round of introductions.
I think applicant right in the middle.
I am, yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for being here and for your patience. I know we're getting started a little bit later than we had hoped. We'll start with a round of introductions. My name is April Seither, and I am the Town Council Chair.
I'm John Anderson on the town council.
Rick Monking on the planning board.
Roger Beely, planning board.
Rachel Hendrickson, planning board.
Sam LaBelle with Acorn Engineering.
Rex Moore with South Portland Housing Development Corp.
Matt Phillips with Carroll Associates Landscape Architects. Ben Money with South Portland Housing Development Corp.
Autumn Spear, planning director for the town. Ben Ladd, planning board.
Scott Harvey, Town Council.
Ron Cushing, Town Council.
Karen Shoup, Town Council. And with that, I was going to hand it over to the town manager, who just stood up and left me sitting here by myself. But I do have town manager Tom Hall sitting to my left. So at this point, I will go ahead and kick it over to you guys, just for the public's benefit. We did sit down, council leadership, Nick McGee and I did sit down and have an initial sit down to kind of plan when the appropriate time was for us to convene both bodies. We do have a quorum of both bodies. And so with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to you guys.
You wish to provide that?
Just gonna tee it up
Oh,
for you
perfect.
guys,
Thank you.
really quickly. In your packet, just a summary, this particular property, it is an existing business. They have met with us a few times, and what they are proposing is to consolidate 3 zoning districts. There was a correction, and if you recently opened your packet, you're all set, but if you looked at it yesterday, then there's a correction to that. So the property right now is zoned TVC, TVC3, and R4. Essentially, having these 3 different districts really makes it hard to decide what density is permitted. The table that I provided gives a summary of what they're proposing and then what the density is in those 3 different districts. I have also made a recommendation that you consider allowing, if you move this forward, consider allowing a reduced front yard setback. The front yard setback in the TVC zone is 35 feet. That's what they have shown, but I think I would, in light of the wetland protections that may be moving forward, hopefully, fingers crossed, giving them that other 10 feet of flexibility would allow them some additional room in the back to be further away from the wetlands. The site is inundated with quite a bit of wetlands that they've planned around. I've also included the amount of rate of growth permits that we have currently available. And so if you did decide to move this forward, even using our rate of growth ordinance would be appropriate and there are available units. With that, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Cool, thank you. Yes, again, my name is Ben Money. I'm a development officer for South Portland Housing Development Corp. We are the affiliate developer wing of South Portland Housing Authority. I'm here to talk about 578 US Route 1. So. Second to wake up. All right, just a little bit about South Portland Housing Development and South Portland Housing Authority. We are a 501c3 developer or nonprofit developer affiliate. Currently, between the Housing Authority and the Development Corp, we own and operate 52 properties between South Portland, Scarborough, and the neighborhood. Of those 52 properties, it's 795 separate dwelling units, with another 95 under construction between 2 different sites. This organization's been around since World War II, during the creation of the Liberty Shipyards. While that was going on, the Housing Authority was created to house the workers at the shipyards. So since then, the Housing Authority has been owning and operating affordable housing in the community. Little more detail about us. We actually own and operate Jocelyn Place. Some of you, if you've been around for long enough, would be familiar. This is a 60 units of 1 bedrooms for low-income seniors, 55 and up. That income band is 60% of the area median income or less. That building was completed just under a year ago. Has got 100% occupancy. Tenants have loved it. Had some great praise, and I think I've seen a few people here that were there, made it for the grand opening. Another example of one of our properties was recently completed is Thornton Heights Commons. That's a mixed-use building. We have commercial space on the ground floor, family housing up above, 1 to 3 unit or 1 to 3 bedroom units. So from this picture, you kind of see we have a wide range of properties, a lot of experience in managing and developing in the area. So yeah, and so give you guys a little idea of the neighborhood here, which you all are probably quite familiar with, but this is the site where the current flea market is, previously the Marshview restaurant that had been around since I think the 40s. So if you're driving north to south along US Route 1, you pass the marsh on your left and right, and then you see one structure coming down the road. I'm trying to give an example on the screen too. And then the next thing on your left is the Marshview now flea market. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Matt Carroll, who is, Matt Phillips at Carroll Associates. He's our landscape architect. He's super familiar with the site and has been huge in helping us work around the constraints of the site.
Yeah. Great. Good evening. I'm Matt Phillips, Carroll Associates. As you can see from the screen and as described earlier, the site, it's a parcel on 578 US Route 1. It's just under 8 acres in size, 7.9 and change, and it's currently zoned as 3 different zones: TVC, TVC3, and R4. And that's really the issues that we're running into. It's, you know, they all have the very different, standards, space and bulk standards and density standards, and it's really hard, as Autumn said, to figure out how to pick one. And even if you pick one or combine them together, it would be hard to get the density really that is needed to make this project really affordable and efficient and fundable, based on the different tax credit programs. So we're looking to consolidate to one zone that works for everybody and to make an efficient project. So the site is roughly a quarter developed. It's all in the front half of the site. Now there's a single building that's described previously that's surrounded on 3 sides by parking in various states of repair and use. The curb cuts on Route 1 are vast, and there are 2 of them. They average about, they are about 92 linear feet of curb cut for just under 300 feet of frontage. Back to that one second, yeah. The back half of the site is where what we're trying to protect as much as we can. It's mostly wooded. There are 3 isolated wetlands in the upland portion, and in the very back portion of the site, there's steep slopes, and then it drops down to a stream and associated wetlands that's shown in red. And so we're trying to protect that as much as possible. Route 1, which we get our frontage on, directly in front of the site, is a divided highway in that instance. So the site can only be accessed directly from coming south to north. And there's a signalized intersection just south of our property at Payne Road, which is just off the map in this instance. So we're looking to, we're looking to change the zone to a contract zone, something that will allow a little bit higher density, some flexibility in building size, footprint and height, and parking requirements. And so here, this next slide, again, is just highlighting some of the existing conditions that we talked about. The site in the top photo shows the single building that's there today. And it's shows its age a little bit. It shows the vast parking and asphalt surfaces all around the parking, the building, which leads to a lot of runoff that's uncontrolled and not treated. On the bottom slide, you can see, this is looking back towards Route 1, you can see a large curb cut, and then the lack of definition and which is adjacent to the MDOT driveway. So there's a lot of uncontrolled access throughout the site. There's no sidewalks on Route 1. It's got some safety issues. And then the middle slide the middle picture shows just sort of how it's being used today. It's an overgrown parking lot that's being used for storage of vehicles, storage trailers, RVs, and it's certainly deteriorating and not the highest and best use that it could be. So this next slide shows our proposed conceptual development for the property. What we're proposing is to put a series of 4 buildings on here, all residential in use. The front half of the site would contain a single building that would be a senior building, 55 plus age restricted, and it would be for low income earners. And the rear of the site would be where we provide workforce housing, and that would be in 3 buildings and 36 dwelling units. So we're looking to do this new project and looking to add or looking to propose 96 units total, a combination of the 4 buildings, 60 in the front, 36 dwelling units in the back. We're looking to have about 114 parking spaces, which would be mostly residents with some visitor and some staff. We're looking to create a safer parcel. We're looking to add sidewalks on Route 1 and internal sidewalks that connect the buildings and the various uses. And we're looking to provide buffer to the resources in the back, while also providing some open green space, a playground area for the families, and a loop trail system as a walkway. So now I'm going to zoom in a little bit to the front of the site. So the front of the site is where we're talking about doing the senior building. And in this slide, it shows the building setback at minimum 35 feet from the right-of-way line, which was the underlying zone front setback. Sounds like there's discussion of it being reduced to 25. And if that's the case, we can, even push closer to Route 1 by a little bit to preserve more of the resources in the back. The front building, the senior building, would be 60 dwelling units of 1-bedroom units. It would be age restricted to 55 up, and residents would be 60% AMI. It would be 12,000 square feet approximately and 4 stories tall. The parking ratio here would be 1-to-1, 1 parking space per dwelling unit. And the building would be funded through a combination of federal low-income housing tax credits, which would be dispersed from Maine Housing, and Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston funds. which have been obtained already for some of that funding. Building would contain a community room and a fitness room on the ground floor. There'd be rooftop EV, rooftop solar PV panels and EV charging stations throughout the parking lot. There would be resident service staff on board. And this would be deed restricted to 55 and up and 60% AMI. And we're also looking to design the front, well, the whole site, but the front in particular is with some future proofing in mind. You know, we've had discussions over the last year with the abutters to the north, who are the MDOT, and to the south, who are private residents, about either partnering with them or gaining an access easement or acquiring land or portions of it to make a connection out to the signalized intersection at Payne Road and Route 1, knowing that that's the best and most efficient access to the site. Hasn't worked out with the abutter to the south, so we've designed the lot that it could make a connection in the future without much work. This parking lot here on the front could be easily converted to building, and access driveways on the south of it could easily make a connection through the property to the signalized intersection. We have had success in meeting with DOT, and we have obtained an access agreement with them for emergency egress or ingress to the property if needed. And so that would be through a locked dedicated gate. And you can just cut off on this next slide, but that would be here, sort of the separation point between the senior housing and the workforce. And so the workforce housing has been allocated to the back of the property. Again, it's 3 buildings that would be 3 stories each, containing 12 dwelling units, and the mix of bedroom counts would be 15 1-bedroom, 15 2, and 6 3-bedrooms. Again, these would be deed restricted as well to families and making between 60 and 100% AMI. These buildings would be townhouse style. It'd be a combination of traditional vertical townhouses and horizontal flat style buildings, units, and parking would be provided adjacent. Also adjacent is the open space and the trail connections and the sidewalk, internal sidewalks that make the connections to the senior building and to Route 1. And finally, the ground floor units here would have rear private yards, and there's ample buffering and yard space provided for that. I think that's the last of the site, so pass it back to Ben to kind of.
Thanks. Yeah, so I've got this slide prepared just to give us a little bit better idea of the demographics of the population he's trying to serve here. On our first row, I have represented what is currently the 60% area median income for our area. So this is who we'd be targeting for our senior housing. So anyone making essentially $53,580 or less a year as a single person family household would qualify for our 1-bedroom apartments. We will of course be serving households with less income than that, but that is the top end. So we can also, in these 1-bedrooms, you can have 2 residents. So we can also serve 2 people households, 2-person households. Then working down into our workforce, this has kind of been a fluid definition between different communities on income bands. Usually it starts with above 60% area median income and falls between 80 and 100. I believe right now in the ordinance, it actually calls out 120 area median income. And so that's why we've kind of left it at the bottom as TBD. If you look down at the very bottom row though, that is a pretty high income range, and we're not sure that's exactly the people we'd like to be serving most. So we have kind of left that up to discussion, kind of depending on what the council would like to kind of see there. Our preference is to provide affordable housing, and so that's our biggest goal here. And kind of the details, I think, is something we can work out. And again, we kind of tried to spell out, 1, 2, 3-bedroom apartments. You can see kind of what their rent restrictions would be. For these types of households, and our funding sources. Something pretty important for us, as developers is going to be requesting a TIF at some point, credit enhancement agreement. By having a TIF, it lowers our operating costs. We're able to take on more debt, which is a huge part of funding these lower incomes, these developments for lower incomes. Super important for the senior housing, even more important for the workforce. There's not a designated funding source for workforce housing right now. So we will be doing a lot of the gap filling as well as asking for outside funding sources. So on top, and then for the senior housing, it's not just the gap filler that it helps with, it's also scoring when we go to achieve low-income housing tax credits. When we're scored against other projects in the neighborhood, having a TIF gives the project more points and more likelihood of getting funded. Super important. Another awesome funding note, we actually, for the senior housing project, we actually were able to apply early for funding to the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston. And the the project has been awarded funds already. So already creating tons of traction and huge proof of concept is clearly there. So then moving on, just kind of a recap of our need for the contract zone. Again, the three zones as a whole, really big hurdle to try and overcome for any development. On top of that, we've definitely run into some struggles where the density might be allowed. We just physically can't build a building of that size. Building footprint restrictions of 10,000 square feet. Our building would be 1,200 square feet or 12,000 square feet. And we can't go any higher. We would need to go higher than the 45 feet. It's kind of an interesting situation where we're allowed the density, but we can't physically build it because of the restrictions in the zoning. And then for the R4 district in the back, we do have a good bit of acreage back there, but again, it's just not a good use of the space. We'd be having to fill in wetlands and things like that, and that's the complete opposite of what we'd like to do. We'd like to preserve it and celebrate it for the community members as much as we can. So creating these denser buildings, putting them up at the front of the site allows us to save as much of the back of the site as possible. And again, if we're able to do this, we'll be only developing 51% of the site. So we'd be able to save 49%, which is really what we're after. So then I'll jump into just a few more of the benefits. Of course, these are all going to be affordable housing in nature. On nearly 100 units, 60 for seniors, 36 for workforce families. It's a great opportunity for reinvestment on the US 1 corridor. We'd be increasing safety along the corridor as well, with reducing the curb cuts, furthering the distance from the lit intersection nearby. We'd be, if anything, preserving the buffer from the Scarborough Marsh. And we'd also be increasing the tax revenue for the town of Scarborough with this reinvestment. And we'd also be bringing outside funding to construct these facilities through the Federal Home Loan Bank and through low-income housing tax credits. So that, I think we've covered most of what we need to cover. And I don't know, hand it over to questions, or Autumn, if there's anything to add.
Yeah,
Questions?
hand it over for questions. Sure.
Excuse me, there's a small matter of protocol. When we were being introduced, I neglected to convene the planning board. So the planning board is so convened, we have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. Procedurally, I can appreciate your wanting to get that taken care of. Okay, so now we'll turn it over for either council or planning board questions. If anyone wants to get us started. Councilor Cushing.
My question is to Autumn. So Autumn, we had a discussion last week where you were educating me about wetlands and the like. And in that conversation, you were talking about the kinds of things that we would do for a developer sort of as offsets to the to preservation of wetlands. Does this project seem to be consistent with that
Yes,
approach?
what we were talking about is additional actions we could take moving forward to look at setbacks and things of that nature to sort of fill in that void if the 25-foot wetland setback goes into place. And so, yes, when I looked at this, they have, I believe, 35 feet right now from the wetlands, so they would meet it. But I always like a little bit of flexibility. And so this gave a really great opportunity to say, hey, this might be a place where we could lower that front setback from 35 to 25 and give them a little bit more room and possibly have even less wetland fill.
And the same concept would apply to going up. I think the point
Yes.
was that we can meet the density requirement but we can build the building, but we can't meet the density requirement.
Yes, and the thing about going up, a couple of the zones that they're in allow 45 feet. And I think whenever we put that in place, we thought, oh, that's 4 stories, but it doesn't quite get you there. You oftentimes need more like 47, 48 feet to get to 4 stories. And so that would be another example of just fixing the ordinance, so to speak, but allowing stories instead of a height.
Right, and you and I have talked at other committees that has come up and that's kind of a frequent request. And so there's definitely an opportunity to fix that in our ordinance so that we're not running into that.
It aligns with codes too, with the different code standards, 3 stories and above grade, yeah.
Just to be clear, that conversation that was had in the context of the wetland setback discussion, the consideration was to make changes in the ordinance that would affect all development. This uniquely is in front of you as a contract zone, so it's giving this project certain exceptions, if you will, for height, setback, and other things unique to this project. But I think there's a conversation that we're likely to have that will be more broad, townwide, if you will.
Counselor Shu?
So you had mentioned with parking that you were gonna have 1 parking unit per the 61 bedroom units for the senior parking, but then you have 36 units in the back. How are you breaking down the parking there?
Yeah, so I can fill in on that one. So basically we've continued the 1-to-1 for the 1-bedroom apartments. So 15 parking spaces for the 15 1-bedrooms. Then we've bumped up to 1.25 parking spaces for the 2-bedroom apartments. And then we bumped up to 2 parking spaces for the 3-bedroom apartments.
And so between the total of that, the 60, and then you said the 60 up front for senior has staff that helps them as well.
Yeah.
All of that.
Yeah, and so we're trying to bridge the balance of providing enough parking while also not building a sea of parking.
Right, and there is a bus stop there, isn't there?
Yes, there is. Yeah.
That's what I thought. Do you typically, or do you have other senior projects that are so close to a state route? How close is the current building?
So the Jocelyn Place is just not even a quarter mile off, but just across the street actually is a Vesta Housing has a.
Right, but that's set back. I guess when you're looking, you're saying, well, we want to be closer, like we have a 35 yard foot setback, and you're saying
Yeah.
maybe we want to get closer.
Yeah, so like the other property that I demonstrated, Thornton Heights, that has commercial space on the ground floor. That's 10 feet from the highway, from US Route 1, same road. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I live in that area. That's a really tricky spot. I don't know if you want to go over the access again, but if I'm coming south on Route 1, I can turn left.
Mhm.
And that's pretty dangerous, because Mend Fitness is right there. And I mean, I've seen almost people coming in and out of that place. And that's dangerous. So, I mean, I have lots of concerns, planning board, about the traffic, the increase that you're gonna see there for sure.
I do want to mention though, that the edge of the street is not the start of the property line though too. So we're actually you can see, I don't know if it's easy for you to see from the distance you're at, but where the cursor is at the top is more or less the top of the street or the street. And then there's, a good probably 15 feet from the property line, and then we would be doing another 25, so.
Yeah, I've just seen a lot of close calls too now with the place across the street now, because it's just such a large increase now of traffic. And then with the building permit, explain to me, so I know that we have the pool for the affordable housing, and you said there's more than enough, but workforce housing is a different pool, is that correct?
So affordable and workforce are together and we have 49 of those left.
Okay,
But this, you wouldn't have to tap into those for this. This is an area 2 and area 2 gets 210 every 3 years. And we
okay.
don't have a lot of ongoing projects. I don't have a run on those
Yeah.
coming up. Dunstan Crossing is using some of those, and then Eastern Village is in that area. It's pretty limited, just here and there.
Okay, so the reason I asked that question is we are in a major school crisis and we've limited the amount of building permits that we have been issuing. And so when I see that you're gonna be building 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, and that many units, but yet they're exempt from that building permit process, that is concerning because we literally cannot handle like any more kids in the schools. That was the only questions I had so far. Thank you.
Point of information though, they're not exempt.
No, staff recommended that they go through the rate of growth ordinance because we have plenty.
Because we
We're not in a problem where they would, they get granted at site plan. And so the next step would be, if you want to move this forward, it would go to planning board for preliminary site plan. And then back to you. And so at that point, we would slate those for them. So they would get taken off the table for everyone else.
Good clarifying. Thank you, John.
I have two questions. On the, I think it's called Doloff Way. Did you say that was, MDOT's? Was that MDOT? So
Yes,
not a-
that's this road
not
to
a
the
public
north.
road then, right?
Right here to the north of the site?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not a public road.
okay. But and it's not gonna be one of your primary access points either.
No, so if you can see where I'm hovering the cursor right now, that would be a gated access.
Okay,
And so it'd be for emergency response.
okay. And I'm just kind of curious, with the mix of affordable and workforce. Is that primarily because of your funding mechanisms, or is it because of market research? Because it seems to me we have quite a few senior housing developments around town now, but we don't have enough workforce housing.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I mean, the market research says that there's plenty of demand for both.
Okay.
And at the same time, there's a huge desire for workforce housing, and we really want to be a part of that movement.
But there's no funding, no funding mechanism.
Nope, not right now.
Okay,
There's
There's
no
no-
outside funding mechanism, but we're, as a housing authority, gonna be bringing our own equity. Whatever equity we can't raise from outside sources, we'll be covering the gap.
okay, thank you.
Other questions? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't specifically have a question, but I certainly do have a couple of comments. The role of the planning board here is to take a look at land use and the role of land use in this area. And I think in terms of this project, the concerns we've heard on access to Route 1, that's my concern as well. Since there's only, as I was trying to see where people could figure out how to turn around and get back, or to get into there if they were heading south. That's going to be something that the planning board will take a look at. That's an issue that comes to us. But for the rest of it, it seems to me that this becomes a very ideal use in terms of the siting of this sort of property. It's on a bus route. There are sidewalks. There are a lot of small businesses there, including a grocery store. It is, if you can get across, if you can get to the light and get across at Route 1, in other words, for those people who are there, they've got one car, it doesn't make a lot of difference because it's essentially walkable. There's veterinarian groups down there. There are little restaurants. It's an ideal place for folks who are in need of affordable housing, whether it's workforce or the senior housing. So what they propose to do in terms of eliminating the deteriorating asphalt I think is also in line with where Scarborough is going. While they may have a lot of parking spaces in there, I think you said 114, was that it? Yeah. There's also a requirement for a great deal of buffering and landscaping in those parking areas. So it will create a much better visual as folks come down Route 1. It really will. It will benefit the environment by the elimination of a lot of that asphalt. So from my personal opinion, the land use is very appropriate. Now, if there are other issues, that may be the town council. But as it comes to the planning board, some of the issues I've raised and some of the issues I've talked about are what we end up taking a look at during the site plan approval process. So I personally think it's in line with our comp plan. It's an appropriate land use. I am familiar, I was on the planning board when Jocelyn Place was designed and brought to the planning board. And the South Portland Housing Authority does a good job. And very good job for Scarborough. And actually is a good developer from my perspective to work with in terms of its responsiveness. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Procedurally, I'm going to open it up to public comment before we continue our council and planning board discussion. So if there are members of the public who would like to speak to this, you're welcome to come to the podium. Yes, please. And you can just state your name and your address for the public record, please.
Yep, no problem. I'm Victor St. John. Our address is 560 US Route 1, so we're the property adjacent to the proposed project. I guess one of the concerns, which was already kind of touched upon, is the amount of parkings and the size of the project, the 4-story buildings. Our property or our building already has an issue with traffic, especially trying to make a left-hand turn out of the building. The curved driveway, for our office is used a lot by a lot of people that shouldn't be turning around there, especially with during the summertime. We have a lot of visitors, campers, trailers going through there, plow trucks in the winter going through there. So that's one of my main concerns, is that the amount of traffic that it's going to create from, essentially having that size building with the amount of people and the parking spaces. Yeah, I mean, that's a big concern as far as, people, because as far as what you're saying, access point, you're right, there's only one way to turn, like going, what is that, northbound, taking a right into the property. So when people miss that, what are they gonna do? They're gonna go use our circular driveway. That's wear and tear on our road and driveway, which I have to, try to maintain. We've already made a few improvements on the building to try to, curb appeal and everything for Route 1. Yeah, that's one of the main concerns, is just the amount of traffic and what it would create an issue for my business. The other issue that I have, which is not really, well, somewhat related, we're gonna get basically hit from both ends, where the Route 1, they're gonna start raising the road a little bit. So if those two projects are going on simultaneously, that's gonna greatly impact, my business negatively as far as construction. I don't know what closures is gonna happen, access to, my patients coming to see us. Yeah, so those are just my concerns as far as the amount of traffic that it's going to create, and then how it's going to, like I said, affect everybody coming through our property.
Thank you, Mr. St. John.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, I think. Feel like, yeah.
We'll come back. Yeah, thank you.
Hello, Allison Bristol, Bayview Avenue. First of all, I want to congratulate South Portland Housing Authority on Jocelyn Place. I understand it's fantastic. I know I'm acquainted with someone who's living there, and they're absolutely thrilled to be there. As part of the process for this project, I think, and I appreciate that this discussion is about land use, but, we talked briefly about it becoming a TIF, and where there's a TIF, there's a CEA. And I think that it would be worthwhile for the public who would basically be, the Scarborough taxpayers will be paying for a CEA. And I get the whole thing with, it's added value to the town, so it doesn't really cost us anything, but ultimately it's Scarborough taxpayers that are, funding the CEA. So, it would be, probably a good idea sooner rather than later. It would be nice to have a draft of what that CEA might look like as part of this process. And also, I know with Jocelyn Place, because I followed that, originally it was a 75% ask, and I think it came down to a 50% ask. The other thing that would be good to be hand in hand with what we're doing tonight is to see a draft of the contract zone agreement, and picking up on the conversation about exempt or not exempt permits. Actually, how the rate of growth ordinance reads is that the affordable housing can be exempt if exemption language is included in the contract zone agreement. So basically from what Autumn has said tonight, it sounds like what's recommended is that we pull permits from growth permits. And with the way that the property is configured, I think 24 dwelling units are in the R4 zone. Which is area 2. Correct me if I'm wrong, Autumn. And there would be, I think there's 25 area 1. Okay, thank you. And there's 25 permits allowed in area 1 in any given year. So I would hope that those 24 permits would be pulled from area 1 versus from the affordable housing pool that we created. In that the way the affordable housing pool works is that if it goes below 50% of the 100, then the council can replenish it at its discretion, which, just adds more housing. So I would hope we'd be able to pull from area 1 and area 2 and not pull from the affordable housing pool at all. Let's see. Oh, another question that I had, and this might be a question for the Housing Authority, is that with Jocelyn Place, the way the CEA read was that it was Scarborough, residents of Scarborough 55 and older who live or work in Scarborough were eligible, but also South Portland residents, and I know veterans and that kind of thing. So I would be interested to know how that all played out with Jocelyn Place. How many Scarborough residents actually benefited from being initial residents there? And then,
Ms. Bristol.
yeah, my time's up. Okay, if I can just add one more thing.
Quickly.
When we had the discussion about the CEA policy in November at the November council meeting, Councilor Anderson wrote a great, I'm going to call it an op-ed in the Leader, How Do We Keep Scarborough Affordable? And it was a really good, interesting piece, but it was 30,000 feet. And I think it would be fantastic if every time we have a proposal like this come forward, we do a cost benefit analysis. So at the end of the day, taxpayers can see what the benefit is or what it's costing them. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Anyone else from the public that would like to make comment? Seeing none, I'm going to give the applicant a chance to respond to some of the public comment and town council or planning board comment that you've heard thus far.
Yep, thank you, April. So I heard a couple things there. I know there's definitely going to be some concern around traffic. We have already engaged traffic engineers to do studies of the area to see the impact of our site. With that, would love to talk to any neighbors, including yourself, come and get our information. We just hadn't made our circle that big yet. You're probably next in line to talk to regardless. So happy to start a conversation. we definitely are aware. It's 100, nearly 100 people at least living in the area that will have an impact. So other things I caught were discussions of the credit enhancement agreement and a TIF. As details go, the details of that agreement have not been put together yet. We are currently working on it now. It's a part of this process. If we were to be any ahead than where we are now, we would be a little too cart before the horse. It takes a lot of money to put those things together. So I do know that we would likely be asking for something similar to what Jocelyn Pace requested. Where that lands, I'm not sure at this point. And then to speak about the residents living in Jocelyn Place, I think that's something you could attempt to talk to our property management about, but I can't actually give away tenant information. So that's as much as I can really say there.
Great, thank you. John, do you want to speak a little bit to the CEA and the process that you guys are undertaking to evolve that process and kind of where you see this fitting in that process?
So I would hope that if this does proceed, that we have established a new affordable housing CEA policy. It hasn't been approved by council yet. The finance committee worked on it last year in conjunction with the Housing Alliance to really make sure we had a good process for how we review, evaluate, do a lot of the cost benefit analysis that was suggested to really make sure we're understanding the numbers before we make the decision. And so my hope is that if this does proceed, you guys can kind of be our guinea pig to test the process that we've outlined, so that when it comes to council, not only can we understand when is it working for us and for you guys, that we get a lot of the information that was requested to inform the final decision when they come forward for application.
Just to that point, the council tabled that matter to February. We have that scheduled for a workshop on February 5th. And presumably it will be available for council consideration and action, maybe even that same night if you wished, or soon. So I would expect that policy will be in place by the time this application comes forward.
Yeah, so then you would automatically be enrolled in it, I guess. But you might want to look, yeah, it might be good for you guys to do that as well.
Okay, so for the purposes of this joint workshop, I'm going to turn it back over. If there are additional planning board members who would like to speak to the land use, go ahead. Thank you, Rick.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Speaking, from the planning board and the space and all that, it also, we're kind of responsible for the built environment itself. And the goals in our comp plan speak a lot about sustainability. And I understand from your narrative that there's consideration for solar and those kind of things. That's great. I think that would be something you want to make sure the planning board, if we see it on plans. Also, you mentioned Main State Housing, and if I recall correctly, they have an all-electric mandate for systems in that building. And so, and I'm sure you're not foreign to that, but that'd be something that I'd be interested as a member of the planning board to ensure that, the sustainability aspects of this land is taken into consideration. And knowing the setbacks on the wetlands and everything like that, that's wonderful. I will also mention that I believe there's, from the Inflation Reduction Act, some potential funding opportunities that may affect the financing of this through using those federal funds for systems that lend itself toward sustainable practices, i.e. going all electric, and with your solar, you can be somewhat mitigate the effects of the grid. And then lastly, I just want to comment on the traffic, because as the folks that live on that side of the marsh, we call that area the gauntlet of lights. And I'm sensitive to that. So making sure that your traffic engineer is working with staff and their traffic consultant in developing the TMP for this project, as well as ensuring that any off-site mitigations are done that will benefit those that are traveling on those roadways. I'm not going to get into the public benefit. That's not my role as a planner. But I think this is a good use of the land. The devil's in the details. And I look forward, if the council so chooses to move this to the next step, I look forward to seeing it at one of our 4-hour meetings that we have on occasion. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, I just wanted to mention, there's a Route 1 study allegedly floating around somewhere. So you might want to just look at that and see if the section that you guys are working, the 7 sections that they're looking at, I think it's 7, right? And just see if there's any potential improvements that are slated sometime in the, the distant future that might help you guys.
That's a DOT study. Or a
It's,
town study.
yeah, it's
Should be on the
it's
town
everybody's involved. The DOT, the town.
Jesus.
Other planning board comments? Go ahead, John.
I'll,
Thank you.
I'll pick up there.
Thank you.
You did great. There's a couple of Route 1 studies. Actually, our transportation committee worked in conjunction with town staff and GPCOG PAC staff a number of years ago, 5, 10, it's fuzzy, on a Route 1 corridor study that included Scarborough and Saco. So certainly covering this area. So that would be one good place to check. That is on our website, I know. A good place to check for recommendations regarding traffic. And also, just in addition to that, GPCOG does have a couple of initiatives that I won't get into all the details here, but if you have contacts there, they would be good ones to reach out to. There's some demonstration projects slated for the coming 3 years. I think that's what Roger was alluding to, and even some further afield studies for this corridor. So all the things to check into, and generally all in line with a lot of the other concerns that you've heard here more specifically about traffic and transportation, circulation, safety, things like that. So I guess I think there's been a lot of really great comments. I agree that I think that this sort of intense use in this location makes a lot of sense. It's in a number of zones, but in our town, our town village zones, which is kind of what I understand, this is the type of development that we're looking for in those places. And, along with that, really taking advantage of the walkability aspects that Rachel was describing. I think that'll be just a huge amenity for your project if done correctly. And, certainly in your work through the DOT and the TMP process, you will talk about access management islands on Route 1 and probably other elements of offsite mitigation. And so I know that they'll have those bases covered, but one thing I will just add that I know is in line with both our current comp plan and transportation study work that the town is undertaking is just this idea of connectivity. And you've kind of touched on that a little bit, but I'll do it again. Because I do think it's really important to work with your abutters to the extent possible. There's a couple, I think it's a private way to the south of here, Higgins Road. That could be in Higgins Street. That could be an option to explore. Certainly you referred already to your direct abutter to the south, but any of these opportunities that you have to speak with these folks, understanding it's one private owner dealing with another private owner, and that the town doesn't really have a lot of leeway there necessarily, but in terms of like the overall, it really does go to benefit everyone, because if you can eliminate or reduce left turns in, left turns out, conflicting movements, and reducing the number of curb cuts that access this area, like that's what everyone gets frustrated about, I think. And volume is another thing that's maybe
it kind of is going to be what it's going to be, but if all of that volume comes out at a signalized intersection, that's kind of the best we can do, I think. And so to the extent that you can work with those butters, we appreciate it. I know we had a project not far from here that came through the site plan process, and we had spoke with them about this, some shared access off of the Route 1 corridor, and they said we couldn't negotiate, we couldn't get it done, and lo and behold, they came at the very last, their last meeting, got approved with shared access to that abutter. So I don't really know what happened, but I do know that that resulted in a better outcome for the general public and for the people trying to access that site. And so one of the initial questions I had was just more specifically about how southbound traffic would access the site. No need to answer that now, but I think that'll come up as you work through the process. Thanks.
Thank you, members of the planning board. As it relates to the contract zone application, are there additional council comments or questions? Councilor Anderson.
Yeah, just in terms of comments that I think people have said, but pursuing connectivity and access, continue to do so, see what you can find as you go forward. That would be important to me if you were to come forward again. When it comes to the workforce housing, I would be interested in seeing something maybe not quite as high as the 120%. I don't know if it's a staggered way to make sure you're giving more restrictions, I guess, to different income brackets to make sure that, again, we really are able to service, and deliver on workforce housing. That 120% is pretty high. I would say, hopefully if this does go forward, you guys would go through the process that we would have in place, assuming the council approves it. That would put a little bit more rigor in the financial review. So I don't think that's an ask. I guess that will be a requirement that we'll want to make sure we do. I please don't come forward seeking exemptions from our growth ordinance. Again, I think right now we have the permits, and so please use them and don't make that request. And other than that, I think it's a wonderful opportunity. I think all the land use reasons that were shared, this is a great property. I'm really going to miss that flea market though. I'm not going to lie. That is like my favorite place to go Christmas shopping. So, yeah, that's where I got to know. But, in all seriousness, I think it, I would love to see something like this. I think we do have a need for affordable housing and workforce housing. And so whatever we can do to continue the process and partner with you guys, I think that would be great.
Other council comment? Yeah, Councilor Jordan.
Yeah, a couple questions. He talked about the pavement. And it is a huge amount of pavement there, but it sounds like the same amount of pavement will be there. You're gonna have 100 parking spaces. It's just not gonna be right on Route 1. It's gonna be spread down through the property. So I don't know if that's a real benefit or not. And the property impact to preserve that is a great idea. I guess the stipulation would be to have that as a permanent thing, either donated to the land trust or something, so that, we don't have another board 10, 20 years now, and then somebody coming to say, we want to expand on this project down into this property now, because they were allowing it because they're doing this, sounds like. Another big issue is the road. I think the greatest thing we ever did in town was putting a left turn lane on Route 1. And that area is a perfect area for a left turn lane. And DOT will have to do this. This is going to be a big project. Who knows if it should happen in the future. But then it comes down to the setbacks. If you allow them to get closer to Route 1, now they want to widen Route 1. Now you've got a 10-foot setback, from building. So I think that would be a real issue. I think we were better off to leave them with a 35-foot setback and get closer to the wetlands. As long as it can preserve that, they're going to preserve 49% of the property. You're not going to like that, but I'm just saying it's a huge area that's going to be preserved. And I just think, thinking into the future of what will happen, and the best thing for this project is to have a left turn lane on Route 1. I almost think it should be a must to have a project this big if the abutters next to them aren't going to allow them to go to the traffic light, which is too bad. But yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Doherty. Other comments? Councilor Cushing, you're all set? Okay, so at this point, and in the interest of time, we're right on time. The purpose of the workshop is for the council to make some kind of advisory motion. And so is there a counselor who's prepared to make an advisory motion based on the comments tonight?
I would make a motion to advise that you guys proceed through the contract zoning process.
Second? Thank you. Discussion on John's
Yeah,
motion?
I've got discussion. It's basically, I think it shouldn't be like they're talking about allow, is this going to approve a four-story building?
So our motion is basically signaling to the developers to continue on with the application process, which is a lengthy process, and there's going to be lots of time for suggestions and review of their application and opportunities for us to make further comment and suggestion.
All right.
And in fact,
Locked in.
the matter doesn't come back to council until it's received preliminary site plan approval by the planning board.
Correct.
So
Right.
presumably, many of these details that have been discussed tonight will have been certainly addressed.
I just think if we're gonna change the zoning,
Mhm.
I don't think we should allow one person to be able to have a variance to have four-story. You know, if you're gonna do it, you're gonna give it one, you gotta give it to, I always said that, it's like, you know, if you're gonna do it for one, then you gotta do it for everybody.
Autumn would like to.
Just wanted to
Point.
clarify, so if they proceed, they will proceed with the understanding that you're comfortable with a four-story building and the number of units that they've proposed, and not applying rate of growth ordinance, trying to figure out a traffic, so they're,
Yeah.
that's what they're gonna run through with me, so the four-story building is part of this understanding. Now, the ordinance does allow a 45-foot tall building. So that could be a really flat body four-story building.
Right.
But what they're proposing is to go, do you know your height?
Not precisely, no.
Not precisely. So that's how they'll run through with the next submittal to planning board.
Yeah, on the other hand, you know, I didn't think a flat roof is a really bad idea as far as roofs. So I think if anything, we should look at the ordinances and maybe allow it for everybody to do it, that, you know, you can go the four, like you're saying, the 4 stories, but you can have a steep pitched roof if you want. So you can put a common sense roof on instead of the flat roof. That we had to get rid of the police fire station because they had buckets on the floor because it was leaking.
Just a point of information, that was actually something that Autumn had brought to long range, right? About allowing something like that.
Yeah.
And so that was something that was tabled, but to your point, that's something that can maybe
Right.
come back to the discussion.
Yeah. But I don't want to send them down the wrong road that we're agreeing tonight to a 4-story, because that's what you're saying, so.
That is the application request
Right.
as it's being presented right now,
Right,
yes.
Right, and if we okay it tonight, then we're
They're
saying
gonna
yes to that.
pursue that application process, but you will have another opportunity to,
I think it's best if I make it clear now how I'll feel on that, or we should.
yes. So what I'm trying to do is just
Yeah,
make sure
that's
that you understand that that is the request and that that is the proposal that they're going to develop based on what they're asking right now. This is not approval of that building per se, because it will, after it goes to planning board, come back to council for ultimate. And you can vote then, but it's gonna be a 4-story building. That's what's coming back.
Special approval just for this one site.
That is what a contract zone amendment request is.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the nature of what they're asking for. Counselor Cushing.
So I don't have an issue with the 4 stories. But it should be, and I believe this is happening, motivation for you folks to do what Scott is suggesting, is to come up with ordinances that align this for everyone. And I would assume that what you're doing would be consistent with any ordinance that we could figure out, but it's kind of time to figure this out. And it's coming up in a variety of ways. We're saying, I'll come back to the wetlands, is we're going to be deliberating on adding a 25-foot setback to the remaining wetlands. And then we're saying to developers, well, there are other ways that you can conserve your property and so forth. And this is exactly the kind of thing where they're saying we're going to chop off 49% of this, but in order to do that, we need to go up a little higher and come up a little closer and so forth. So I really hope that this process becomes an object lesson to get the ordinances figured out so that we can accommodate these kinds of projects, which benefit us because they keep things dense. The cost to serve is lower. They are consistent with our sustainability goals, with our workforce housing goals. I guess they motivate us to figure out the transportation issues and so forth. So this is a project that, if it's done right, will put us on a path to do a lot of other things right. But I agree with you completely that one without the other, doesn't fly. So I'll vote to move it forward. And my message is really not to you, it's to town staff, the rest of us, to start getting our act together.
You're gonna include that in your council goal, right? So I can take that back to.
Just send me a little note. We'll make sure it's there. Thank you.
Now I have two responses.
Any other council comments before I call the vote? Okay, and so for what it's worth, I'm in alignment with Counselor Anderson's comments. I would strongly encourage you to make sure that you are pulling from the permit pool, and that you're taking the public comment into consideration. Obviously, traffic is a hot button. Not that you weren't aware walking into this meeting that was going to be the topic, but it has a way of making its way into every conversation lately. And so please be advised of that. With that, I will go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you very much. The motion passes. With that, I am going to go ahead and we are going to recess in between the end of this workshop and our regular business meeting. Thank you again for your participation, and I look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Thank you very much.
Hi, guys. Welcome back. So at this point, we have adjourned our workshop with the planning board and we're going to move through the rest of our agenda. Item number 4 is general public comment. If there's anyone in the audience wishing to make general public comment on something that is not on our agenda this evening, now is the time to approach the podium and make your general public comment. Please state your name and address for the public record. Direct all your comments at me, the chair.
Good evening, Dan Dickinson, 40 Holmes Road, Scarborough. Just be brief here. I'm up here to request if the public meetings could be televised on the YouTube channel from the Long Range Planning Committee on September 14th of 2012. I can repeat these if you want. At the Long Range Planning Committee, a meeting on November 16th, 2012. Again, Long Range Planning Committee. The Town Council meeting on February 6th of 2013. The Town Council meeting March 6th, 2013. The Planning Board meeting March 11th, 2013. And the last would be the Town Council March 20th, 2013. And that last one is the date that the Light Industrial District was adopted by the Town Council. I would like to most all of 2013 is available except for these. So I'd like to request that those be added to the channel for myself and the public to review the creation of the Light Industrial District. Thank you.
Thank you. Your request has been received. Anyone else wishing to make general public comment? Mr. Raby.
John Raby at Forest State Drive. I've got 2 items. First is a present for you all.
Oh, boy.
This is the Nobel Peace Prize 2024 acceptance speech, which I'd like to present to you in hopes that you'll read and study it. Now, I guess you all know that over the past year, the city councils in Portland and Belfast have passed resolutions divesting themselves of any investments in companies that do business with Israel or corporate or the Israeli government itself because of what's going on in Gaza. And I've come here to ask you folks to do the same thing. Let me give you a little background. Recently, Amnesty International, which has no quarrel with Israel's right to defend itself, filed a 300-page report showing that the Israeli government is committing genocide in Gaza. And only today I was listening to an interview with one Charles Blaha. Mr. Blaha is a retired State Department official. He was in charge of the Office of Security and Human Rights for the State Department. And what he said during that interview is that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, above and beyond any defending itself. It's not self-defense he's talking about, and that the State Department itself has it on record, on official record, on file in the State Department, that the Netanyahu government is doing so. And so for those reasons, I hope you will consider my request. I can provide you, April, with my business card, so you can let me know at some point whether you'll consider it and how it may turn out. And so that is my request. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Raby. Anyone else wishing to make general public comment? Thank you, sir. With that, I will go ahead and close public comment. Item 5 is the minutes from our December 4th, 2024 Town Council meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Any discussion? All those in favor? We're voting to approve the minutes from our December 4th meeting.
Okay. Yes.
Show that as unanimous. Item 6 is adjustments to the agenda. This evening, I would like to recommend that we move Resolution 24-007, 008, and 009 to proceed to be after item 7 So it will go before the town manager's report.
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Great, thank you. Item 7 is the treasurer's warrants. I took care of those before the meeting, which brings us to our resolutions for this evening. Resolution 24-007 is act on the request to recognize the Scarborough High School girls soccer team. Unfortunately, Counselor Fellows was unable to be here with us tonight. He is with his family, but he was the person who brought these forward for council consideration, and I know that he's very much wishing that he could be here to celebrate everybody tonight. So with that, I will go ahead and read the resolution. I think probably the best thing to do is I will go ahead and read the resolution. It includes the entire team's names, and I promise I will do my best to get everybody's name. I've been nervous about this all day long. But I will do my best. And so then after I've read everyone's name, we'll have each member of the team come up, and I probably come this way, and I'll have John hand out a little town pin, and then we'll take a picture and everyone will clap and give you the recognition that you deserve. Resolution 24-007, Scarborough High School Girls Soccer Team. Be it resolved by the Council of the Town of Scarborough, Maine, that whereas the Scarborough High School girls soccer team did invest many hours of training in preparation for the 2024 Southern Maine Regional Championship and the State of Maine Class A Championship, and whereas the Scarborough High School girls soccer team did win the 2024 Southern Maine Regional Championship and did compete in the State of Maine Class A Championship. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Town of Scarborough in Town Council assembled that the following members of the Scarborough High School girls soccer team, their coach, assistant coaches, and athletic trainers are hereby recognized for the great honor that they have brought their team, their families, and the Town of Scarborough. The Scarborough Town Council is proud of their efforts and their hard work. Team members: freshmen, Josie Duncan, Sophie Kelly, Charlotte Kirkala, Gwen Martin, and Scarlett Floyd. Sophomores: Margaret Booth, Vera DeSoto, Abigail Roberts. Juniors: Shay Charsky, Thea Comstock, Peyton Crosby, Paige Garlock, Kate Goodwin, Hope Moletsky, Kate Mariski, Ava Page, Abigail Risquina, and Maya Taylor. Seniors: Carolyn Benson, Emma Blanchett, Grace Carlista, Ava Carpenter, Amelia Caruso, Avery Charland, Emerson Flaker, Delia Fravert, Alana Jenkins, Sophia Nelson, Sophia Rinaldi, Ellie Rummelart, Megan Rummelart, and Ava Serban. Head coach is Michael Farley. Assistant coaches Doug Bennett, Hadley Yescott, and Jill Deering. Athletic trainers Katie Gladstone and Riley Billings. Signed and dated on this 18th day of December 2024 on behalf of the Scarborough Town Council and Town Manager of Scarborough, Maine. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All those in favor? Congratulations, girls. And if you could all just come up, that would be great.
April, you want to go?
Well, I would ask that the coaches come up and we'll take a picture in front of the dais with the council.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, that was my daughter, yeah. Yeah.
You get my holiday. No.
Yeah, I know. Well, coach was saying my daughter Charlotte went to one of their games and had them autograph her soccer ball. Cause they're all into it, yeah.
Our next resolution, that's the same one. Our next resolution is 24-008, Scarborough High School Boys Soccer Team. Be it resolved by the Council of the Town of Scarborough, Maine, in Town Council assembled, that whereas the Scarborough High School Boys Soccer Team did invest many hours in training in preparation for the 2024 Southern Maine Regional Championship and the State of Maine Class A Championship, and whereas the Scarborough High School Boys Soccer Team did win the 2024 Southern Maine Regional Championship and did compete in the State of Maine Class A Championship, now, therefore, be it resolved by the Scarborough Town Council in Town Council assembled that the following members of the Scarborough High School Boys Soccer Team, their coach, assistant coaches, and athletic trainers are hereby recognized for the great honor that they have brought their team, their families, and the town of Scarborough. The Scarborough Town Council is proud of their efforts and their hard work. Team members, here we go. Sophomores, Connor Casey, Alexander Jordan, Andrew Lefebvre, Papa Oisey. Juniors, Denver Backman, Carter Blanche, Fletcher Bristol, Aiden Chaplick, Christopher Coburn, Joseph Donahue, Cahill Goshi, Angelo Gomez, Matthew Hatch, Everett Herrick, Ibrahim Jabril, Lucas Klimkowski, Wilder Leightonhart, William McDonald, Aidan Pham, Owen Powers, Benjamin Shea, Ryan Sugars, and Reed Thurl. Seniors, Matthew Booth, Caden Corbett, Samus Corey, Santana Diaz, Joseph Early, Matthew Falona, Nicholas Gondolfo, Dylan Grant, Jacob Levine, Cooper Millar, Braden McDonald, Liam Regan, Gavin Sanderson, and Graham Sponseller. Head coach Mark Diaz, assistant coach David Wakeham, and Brian Adams, athletic trainers Katie Gladstone and Riley Billings. Signed and dated this 18th day of December 2024 on behalf of the Scarborough Town Council and the town manager of Scarborough, Maine. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All those in favor? Congratulations, gentlemen.
You did a good job.
No, take the basket, grab a thing.
Our last resolution and recognition this evening is Resolution 24-009, Scarborough High School Boys Cross Country Team. Be it resolved by the Council of the Town of Scarborough, Maine, in Town Council assembled, that whereas the Scarborough High School Boys Cross Country Team did invest many hours of training in preparation for the 2024 State of Maine Class A Championship, and whereas the Scarborough High School Boys Cross Country Team did compete in and win the 2024 State of Maine Class A Championship, and whereas Coach Jim Harmon was named Coach of the Year for 2024, his third time winning this recognition, And now therefore be it resolved by the town council in town council assembled that the following members of the Scarborough High School boys cross country team and their coach, assistant coach, and athletic trainers are hereby recognized for the great honor that they have brought to their team, their families, and the town of Scarborough. The Scarborough Town Council is proud of their efforts and hard work. Team members, freshmen, Callan Driscoll, Kieran Leahy, Peter Milewski, Eli Smolin, and John Wolfgram. Sophomores, Colin Anderson, Cody Brook, Cameron Douglas, Lee Edmonds, Eli Fengler, Sawyer Hain, Jack Ledger, Damian Meisner, Atticus Miriam, Jackson Peters, Caden Smith, and Adam Stockwell. Juniors, Jose Bencomo, Max Edwards, Griffith Heath, Noel Heath, and Nolan Meyer. Seniors, Sam Asia, Vincent Caruso, Ethan Keller, Nicholas Koziel, Baxter Merriam, Landon Springer, and Ethan Stockwell. Head coaches James Harmon, assistant coach Craig Robinson, athletic trainers Katie Gladstone and Riley Billings. Signed and dated this 18th day of December 2024 on behalf of the Scarborough Town Council and the town manager of Scarborough, Maine. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All those in favor? Congratulations to our boys cross country. And with that, I understand that you all have other things that you would like to do with your evening, including some studying. So thank you very much for being here, guys. And I'm going to give you all a minute to leave. Congratulations again.
Thank you. Thank you. It was nice to do that.
Fantastic. I love it when the kids come. Next item on our agenda is the town manager's report. I will hand it over to Tom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I do have a few items just to touch on. Eastern Trail closed the gap. Here I am, the broken record, but this week is actually very momentous. The construction documents are complete. I have seen a copy of them. We are promised the state permit by Friday this week. And I executed the construction services proposal today with our consultant. So things are clearly moving forward. There's a lot of interest with stakeholder groups. There's a lot of private and corporate money that's backed this. And I think our residents appreciate the Eastern Trail as a recreation system in town. So we're very excited to get to the construction phase. The Black Point Road reconstruction project, we have met with the residents of Proudson Neck area that are most directly affected. We've, I think, stayed in pretty good close communication with them. This time we shared the design with them and they provided some good constructive feedback. We've shared that with our consultants. And so we are on track. I will say, I think everyone's a bit anxious. We intend to have this project complete by June 15th, and I think that's still doable, but we really do need to get out to bid. I think our timing is good around first of the year. So we're very hopeful that we'll be able to advance that project right away and get it completed before the summer season. With respect to the election, I've commented on this in the past. We have established internal protocols. We were preparing to communicate with the state regarding some, what I thought was going to be unsolicited feedback, but the state, to their credit, did put together a very comprehensive survey, and we've participated in that. Thankfully, it touched on all the points that we were intending to comment on. So we feel as though the state is interested in listening. So hopefully they'll take that feedback into consideration. Beach fees, I just wanted to kind of alert the council. I think Councilor Shoup is aware of this. This matter has been kind of working its way through various committees, the Community Services Advisory Committee notably, and they have a set of recommendations to modify, not wholesale, but make some fairly thoughtful and key changes to the beach fees. I think for councilors that have been around a while or residents paying attention, beach fees often elicit a lot of interest and comment. And leadership, I think in their wisdom, advised that we provide some advance notice to the public that this is under consideration. And so we were working with our communication staff to communicate out what the proposal is. At this point, I have it tentatively scheduled to come before you in February. So I just want to kind of alert you to that. With respect to council goals, Chair Seither has communicated out with the council, but for the public's benefit, it appears as though the council will be doing its goals on Saturday, January 25th, at roughly 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., kind of a 4-hour block in the middle of the day. I presume we'll have the session here in these chambers. We have made arrangements for GBCOG, Belinda Ray in particular, to provide some facilitation help for us, just to make sure we're thorough and efficient in our time together. We'll do some advanced work with her, just so she's aware of some of the background first. And I do need to connect with leadership to grab an hour sometime in the next week or two. And then graciously, the council's agreed to meet with senior staff. At this point, we're looking for Thursday evening, January 16. I mentioned that so you could perhaps put that on your calendars now. We're thinking a 5 to 8 timeframe. It might be shorter. But part of that is we're going to task staff to do some advanced work. And I expect that you won't need to communicate in great detail with all senior staff. I think their advanced work will probably answer a lot of your questions. Having said that, I suspect 4 or 5 departments might garner some further conversation. So it might be 2 or 3 hours at most, but we very much appreciate the time. Community Services Director, as promised, we've moved swiftly through the recruitment process. As I've said in the past, we had 15 applicants. We interviewed 6. We've advanced 2 finalists. This week, we'll be interviewing both of them. One was yesterday. The second candidate will be tomorrow. Very pleased with how thorough. It's really a full day that we're having the candidates spend with not just an interview panel, but community services staff. There's a number of residents, other members of my senior management team. So the intent here is really for both the candidates and for us, is to really get as many folks to meet these folks and provide feedback on, provide their thoughts. And for these positions, I've come to appreciate is equally important that the fit works for us and for the candidate. Pleased that we're moving so quickly. Just want to mention to the public and the council, we will be making the official formal transfer of power. Tody will be stepping down as town clerk at the first of the year. Kristen Barth will assume those duties. In fact, later on your agenda, there is a council action to appoint Kristen as the registrar of voters. So very pleased to have really had the opportunity over an extended period for Kristen to be part of the team, for her to learn with and from Tody. Both are staying with the organization. The good news is they're cross-trained and can support each other. One of the things that you've come to appreciate in your time on council is that there's a constant drumbeat of council meetings, and it's extremely hard. We're either putting together agendas for the next meeting in the following week or cleaning up on a meeting. There's almost never a week that's off. And so I'm excited for Tody to be able to have an opportunity to take a couple weeks off sometime. I don't know that she's ever done it in her 30 plus years. Holiday schedule, just housekeeping stuff. Of course, we'll be closed Christmas Day. The council was gracious enough to close town hall on Thursday, the 26th. Thank you for that. And of course, New Year's Day. 2 final things, if I could. Board docs, it's the system that we use for council business. We intend to roll that out for all council committees, not for all committees of town, but at least the major committees, the 5 major council committees. For you, that should not be much of a transition, but we've got this product. It seems to be working well. We think it's time to roll that out in a bigger way. And then finally, with the Route 1 project, I think there was some mention of it in passing earlier this evening in public comment. I was part of a large meeting. There's probably 50 different stakeholders from all state and federal agencies. This is really looking at the issue of Route 1 as it crosses the marsh in particular, in light of what we know today with current conditions. It is flooding half a dozen times a year and is likely to continue and worsen. With sea level rise, that certainly the prospect of that is even more acute. So essentially, they're working with all the different stakeholder groups. You won't be surprised to hear that not everyone aligns. A lot of the natural resource folks are concerned with things beyond just making the highway passable and to fortify it for the future. But I was very pleased. There appears to be a conceptual understanding. Essentially, the approach that is going to be considered further is a bridge. It'll be a span as much as 75 feet, and it would replace the 4 culverts that exist there today. There were other options that they modeled, but the consensus of the group was that was the preferred. I mention that because there will be a requirement for council action to approve a grant application probably in early February at the latest. The intent is to apply for a federal so-called PROTECT grant. I'm not familiar with that grant fund system, but this project is estimated between 36 and 44 million at this point, so it's a major undertaking. The good news is there's no local match. And there's still a lot of issues to work through, not the least of which, as you might expect, by allowing more water to pass under Route 1 to the other side of Route 1, we're going to be very interested to know what sort of impacts there are on abutting properties north of Route 1. And also, they intend to raise the roadbed about 4 feet across the marsh. And Ann John's Restaurant comes to mind. There's a number of other residential properties on the Dunstan side of the marsh that we should be aware of in terms of how the road will match into those driveways and those lawn areas. So we'd ask for a robust public process once some of those details are better understood, and I'll be pushing to make sure that that happens for our residents. So pleased to be part of that process. And the other one is just constructability. It is going to be an absolute headache during construction. There's no way around it. At best, I think we can expect we'll have 1 lane moving continuously in each direction, and that's going to be challenging for some times of the year and the day. But anyway, we should flag those issues early and do our best to kind of work through them. With that, that is my report.
Does anyone have questions for Tom? Yeah, Scott.
On the Black Point Road, I just wanted to clarify down at the end, that is going back to a 2-way street.
Yes.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, I should say the FEMA, this is largely funded by FEMA, though there is a 10% match. And so we could be in the order of $300,000 to $400,000 local contribution to this. We'll know more with the cost estimate in a couple of weeks. But FEMA's requirement is they'll essentially put back what was there. They don't allow enhancements. And frankly, in talking to the residents, they don't really want enhancements. That is kind of a dead-end section of road. It ends at Checkley Point, and it really services that immediate neighborhood. There's no through traffic at this point.
Yeah, right now it's 1 way, but it's public.
Yes.
Road down to.
Oh, sure.
One of our last access for people in town to be able to see the ocean. It's just gonna be, they're gonna put rocks back there.
It's a bit more involved than that. They'll have to certainly improve that slope with an engineered solution.
Right.
It's not going to be rock armament from the toe of the slope, the sand, all the way to the road edge, but it will be an engineered solution. The other part that we're anxious to repair is to actually address some of the drainage. Right now, there's no drainage, so everything that drains down from the up above is either coming under the road and undermining it, or sheet flowing across the top and actually helping some of those slope challenges. Right. So yeah. There'll be drainage addressed as part of this as well.
Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Tom? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we will move through the remainder of our agenda. Order number 24-123 is a 7 p.m. public hearing and action on the following applicants who have applied for renewal of their manufactured housing communities licenses. Number 1 is Crystal Springs Manufactured Housing Community, Crystal Springs MHP LLC, and they are located at US Route 22. Number 2 is Pinecrest Manufactured Housing Community, Teresa DeFoss, 126 US Route 1. And number 3 is Hillcrest Manufactured Housing, Teresa DeVos, 126 US Route 1. These are coming to us from the town clerk.
Yes, this is the annual on these licenses. They have been inspected and it's been recommended that they all get approved.
Thank you, Tony. There is availability for public comment on this issue. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Show that as unanimous. Thank you. Order number 24-124 is a 7 p.m. public hearing and action on the new request for a cannabis establishment license from Leo Paquette, doing business as UGP LLC, located at 31 Washington Avenue for a medical cannabis manufacturing facility. This is coming to us from the Assistant Town Manager.
So this is a new application for an existing cannabis business. No concerns from staff, and just point of note, this is not in one of the 2 areas of town that we've had concerns, so properly zoned in the industrial district.
Great. Thank you, Liam. There is opportunity for public comment. Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Any council discussion? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Show that as unanimous. Thank you. Old business, order number 24-112 is second reading on the request for a moratorium in the light industrial district. This has had pretty lengthy discussion at the council level. John, do you have anything you want to add or use to tee this up this evening?
No, I just want to add that Counselor Cushing and I have had several conversations with residents and property owners since we last met, and that I do plan to propose an amendment tonight for what's before us for council consideration.
Great, thank you. There is opportunity for public comment on this item. If you would like to make public comment, please approach the podium.
Thank you. Before I speak, one of our neighbors, Lori Baxter, who has spoken before you, ended up having to work late this evening and sent an email at the last hour that I would like to read into the record. And this is Lori Baxter, and she lives at 2 Kennebago Drive, I believe it is. And she says, "I'm sorry, I'll be working late tonight and unable to attend. My only response is that I hope our neighborhood concerns and willingness to be proactive in discussions will encourage other counselors to make the right decision beyond a reasonable doubt that they are voting for what is right for our town, our neighborhood, and protecting the West Scarborough area from becoming the new industrial area of Scarborough." I agree with Denise. Our concerns have always been and will continue to be, 1, 24/7 trucking industry is by no means light industry. 2, our wells and the need for public water supplied to the area. 3, traffic safety and road structure versus the rate of growth. And 4, overall effect on our investment as taxpayers and homeowners. And that's from Lori Baxter.
Thank you very much.
And I'm Denise Hamilton of 2 Rod Road. I, along with my husband, fully support the moratorium, whether as originally written or John's modified version, which he shared with us. The first and most important reason, as confirmed by an attorney that I recently consulted with, is the clear violation by the town of Scarborough of the Maine statute Title 30A, Section 4352, under additional notice that all parcels affected by the zoning change or proposed amendment must be notified by first-class mail at least 13 days before the public hearing, and a record must be kept. The town has not been able to produce the proof this was done for the initial rezoning or subsequent amendments. This is not against Autumn, obviously, as she was not here during the initial rezoning, and I believe any amendments. Heck, if she was here, we might not be here discussing this topic. As she's indicated during a public meeting, she wouldn't have supported this area being light industrial. Secondly, as I've repeatedly asked over the last several years, and my question still not answered, is how did we end up where we are when it's clearly against the recommendations of Long Range Planning Committee and the comprehensive plan? Third, there are inconsistencies and contradictions between the performance standards and some allowed uses. Lastly, as I previously mentioned, Holmes Road is posted from 40 Holmes Road to the Saco line every spring based on the winter and can be confirmed by town council meeting minutes. This is a decision based on the integrity of the road or lack thereof, not a subjective decision by the Public Works Director. Long Range Planning Committee has indicated repeatedly over the last few months with the growth in this area that west of the turnpike should remain rural farming. There's already so much traffic accidents and our safety at risk, and it's only going to get worse with the approval of Roma Joe's on Payne Road and Bridges Drive and Market Basket in the Downs. There are multiple accidents on Payne Road weekly. Traffic backed up almost to the Turnpike Bridge on Holmes Road, and traffic backed up almost to Hannaford during evening commute. I ask all of you to please put yourself in our shoes who have been residents on Two Rod Road for 5, 10, 20, 40, 50 plus years. We've all been here long before these developers own their land and have worked hard for what we have, and there are more of us being negatively affected by the ordinance that's currently in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hamilton. Other public comment?
Hi, Daniel Dickinson is at 40 Holmes Road. This moratorium is going to impact about 78 acres of my light industrial investments in this district. I just want to start off saying that this is a moratorium potentially going to be amended to the use of distribution, wholesale trade, and transportation, including truck terminals. Councilor Anderson and I had discussions that maybe truck terminals would be amended only. Realizing that distribution and wholesale trade is also going to be potentially included in his amendment, it does have it is less than the whole district, but I'm going to oppose it strictly here because I have 4 potential users willing to bring utilities across the highway, and they are all falling under the distribution and wholesale trade, not trucking terminals, but distribution and wholesale trade. Moving forward, I want to touch base with something as far as notice to the Two Rod Road neighbors. When the district was adopted or proposed from B2 to LI and RF to LI, there is a statute of limitation on the notification period. So they're really looking back, there is no claim to be able to have to, the town may not be able to prove that mailings were sent out, but at the same time, there's really no standing here. It's been a long time. This process for the light industrial district started with the 2006 comprehensive plan, and it took 8 years to get to 2013 where it was finally adopted. Now it's been 11 more years where it has been adopted, and it's got some precedence here. It's the law of the land. Because of this, starting in 2006, knowing that this district was coming, I made a plan to invest, and now I've acquired, starting in 2019, all the way through 2022. I've got, like I said, 78 acres of developable land. You'll notice on the handout I gave you that the green areas are the areas that are going to be impacted by immediate development for distribution and warehousing. I'm ready to send an application to the planning department, and this moratorium just puts me in a position where I can't do anything for 90 days. The problem is Long Range Planning Committee is already trying to make adjustments to the ordinance, which is just going to tie my hands and maybe indefinitely prevent me from developing this land for the reason I bought it. It's going to put me in a real pickle. I believe that this moratorium is not necessary, where the discussion is already continuing at Long Range Planning Committee. And I just think there was a process to get the district adopted. It was followed. As I spoke earlier, I've asked for the records of the public meetings to be televised so we can review that. But the reality is that the process was followed. And if the town wishes to downzone the district, they should also follow that same process. Not slam the door in my face with a moratorium and prevent me from presenting my application. And it's very important to know that the reason why I haven't done my application is because I'm waiting for FedEx to get their approval. Their approval comes with access to my 2 interior lots off of Two Rod Road. And once they get approval, I can move forward. I can't move forward now because I don't have right title and interest to access over their property. So since 2021, when FedEx, and not necessarily FedEx, but Eastern, who previously owned that property, they started the application in 2021. Once I found out, I went and bought that land. I knew that whoever developed that property would have to provide me access on the rear land. Again, I've been planning this for 20 years.
Mr. Dickinson, you know what I'm gonna say.
Yeah. Last thing to say is that there is some financial implications that are going to be put on me if this goes through. It's going to have, in my opinion, a negative impact with my lender. I have 2 different lenders, and it could be also putting me in some hot water. I got to ask you to vote no on this. I'm willing to talk about truck terminals. I'm not proposing a truck terminal. I really think it should be voted no, and we should get together outside of a moratorium. I really would appreciate a vote no here. This is going to be a big problem if it goes forward. It's going to lock me up, and it could turn into RF, or there's a bunch of things that could happen after the fact, and it's just not fair. I followed the town's rules. It's been the law of the land for a long time, and I'm leaning on this town to do the right thing. Thank you.
Mr. Dickinson. Anyone else wishing to make public comment? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Council discussion.
Amendment.
Counselor Cushing, would you like to go first? Or are you pointing at John? Okay, we're gonna defer to
Well-
Counselor Anderson, who has prepared a potential amendment,
Yep.
which was sent to the council in advance.
Yep. So I would like for the council to consider an amendment that I shared with you guys in advance, and essentially the focus is to really limit what is under the moratorium. So before, what was previously proposed would have prohibited a moratorium on all 28 uses and 2 special exceptions that are currently in the LI zone. After conversations with residents and the developers, or sorry, landowners, trying to find that compromise that, protects the interests that we heard tonight from the residents, but also from the landowners. And through that conversations that we had, I just felt like the trucking terminals, the distribution, that particular one, tended to be the biggest concern of residents. Again, this isn't going to solve the issue that they primarily have, which is around FedEx, but as this gets studied and re-reviewed by long range, there may be additional performance standards or things that they could put into place to take the residents' concerns into consideration, so that the things that they're experiencing today wouldn't necessarily proliferate if that's what's recommended ultimately as the process advances. In consultation with staff, it was suggested to also include the 3 marijuana uses. Again, I don't think there's a strong sense of removing them. It's just one of those areas that also continues to be a concern for residents. And so just allowing the conversation to happen in the next 90 days to actually reassess, reevaluate, and confirm that these are uses that we want to allow. Again, this moratorium doesn't predicate that trucking terminals are going to go away. It just gives the space for the process to work itself out, for the public to participate through our long range planning committee, through our ordinance committee, and then ultimately back to the council. It is a process I think we can get done in 90 days so that, property owners like Mr. Dickinson can continue his work that he wants to do. If any of these uses ever come up as something that he wants to apply for in the next 90 days, assuming that they continue. So again, I think for me, it's just the purpose of these were really to just minimize the uses, but address both parties with a compromise that, again, I don't think anybody's happy with. But to me, that's what happens when you compromise. Sometimes everybody has to give a little. And for me, this was the solution that I felt most comfortable putting forward for consideration.
John, would you like to make a motion
Yep.
amend.
So I would like to make a motion to amend the moratorium with the document you have in front of you and what's online.
Great. Discussion on John's amendment. Counselor Cushing.
Yes. So, Counselor Andis, I think this is correct. My concern is the ambiguity where it says wholesale trade and, maybe that's a term of art. But my take, and I think we heard tonight, was that the biggest issue was 24/7 trucking. And I think that what I heard was that what we want to do is get this into long-range planning where we could look at performance standards that would address the central concern of the residents without impeding the landowner's ability to go ahead with his projects. And I think that seems to have two dimensions to it. One is the practical. Well, on paper, it doesn't seem like this limits the landowner in any way. But if there's any ambiguity around it, then that may affect the banking, it may affect the ability to get leases and tenants and so on and so forth. So my question to you is, can we just make it say what the concern was, which is no trucks, and leave it at that? I think that will get it to where we want it to go, which is the long-range planning committee and that level of discussion. And we won't risk putting the landowners in a situation where there may be unintended consequences from our action.
So
Thank you, Counselor Cushing. So I think what we're looking for is clarity on whether wholesale trade and transportation and trucking facilities is kind of an industry term, or like what was the rationale behind that specific set of language. And so I can see our town planner making her way to the podium. Welcome, Autumn.
Thank you. That is just the specific use that's grouped together in the district. And so I think all of them have a trucking component. And they could all possibly have a 24/7. It depends on, you could have a very small wholesale trade business, or Amazon could be seen as wholesale trade. So that's why they're all together.
So, right, and I think that's not what we're trying to do here. We are trying to eliminate box trucks, semi trucks, all of those big things that one would equate with FedEx, expanding. And I think when I heard the residents, I think that all of the concerns that I had emanating from something which we can't do anything about anymore, which is the FedEx terminal. And I think their major concern, as I understood it, was, at least in terms of the quality of their life, was the noise, the traffic, the lights, all of those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the issues with respect to the wells and some of those others are issues that I would hope we would get to in the long range plan. But right now, I think that they are interested in one specific thing. So is there any reason why we can't just use plain English as opposed to something from the taxonomy so that everybody will be very clear about what we meant?
I would suggest that we need to use the specific use as it's defined in the district, so we're very clear. And these are grouped together because they have potentially the same look and feel and outcome of concern to the residents. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Autumn. Yeah, Counselor Shu.
Sure. So one of my questions was if the town planner was part of that discussion that you had with the residents and the negotiations that came with this. Because I do not think light industrial is appropriate over there, and we have a town planner who's very experienced who has that same opinion. I do not support this amendment. I do not think it addresses the residents' concerns. I think it's addressing a business person's concerns, one property owner's concerns, but we don't just have abutting residents who are going to be affected by the fact that we have a light industrial zone over there. I think the fact that, they're completely exempt from the good neighbor ordinance, this amendment doesn't, it maybe touches on it, but it doesn't solve that problem, that there's apparently 27 other uses that could go in there that could potentially be 24/7, that could have the noise, that could have their lights on, that are generating more traffic. My other biggest concern is that, and I appreciate what Mr. Dickinson is, he keeps referencing the 2006 comp plan. That was before the downs even existed. So I think, and we heard Karen Martin say this in one of our workshops, was that, this was created when we were looking for more commercial zones. When you look at our town, when you join the conversations we're having, it doesn't seem appropriate to have a light industrial on the western side of 95. One of my major concerns, and one of the things I would like to see if this zone stays, is that you have to have public utilities over there. So I think we should support this moratorium. I think that our town has changed so much that it does not make sense to have any sort of commercial entities over there. The fact that you can't even have, trucks on Two Rods Road. I think there's going to be some major issues going on with what's already going to be happening there that we can't stop. And so I'm just going to continue to support the moratorium, but I'm afraid the amendments don't really address the residents' issues that we've been hearing, or that we will be hearing if we continue to operate a light industrial zone down there and develop it more than it is now.
Other counselor comments? Counselor Anderson.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Counselor Shoup said is legitimate. I feel though that we need to focus on the top priority, which I've heard on many conversations with them and in long range. And so I think this covers that. Doesn't mean that they can't assess and do other things as they work through the process. But my concern is if they do too much, we're not gonna be able to accomplish much in 90 days once we really open the zoning. So I would like to at least prioritize this particular piece, which would require us to put the moratorium in. And if that means they get that portion done and then want to continue to dig in and make other recommendations, that's totally up to them. I get the sense that everybody felt on long range that this does belong to BLI, and there was a lot of work that was done. There are portions that they think maybe could be converted back. But again, in talking with the residents, what I heard was, as long as they don't know what's happening and as long as it doesn't impact them, they don't care. It can be LI, it can be RF. And I think that just goes, for the reason why we need to revisit the trucking terminals in specific, because that's where there is no performance standards today. And so that is an opportunity to really, tighten up some of the gaps that we have and make sure that that's at least the near-term focus. And then again, if there's a desire for the council or for the committee or anybody to kind of go even further, I think that's fine. But this at least is kind of a short-term pause on these specific uses so that we can get those done quickly. And then if there's a desire for more work, then I'm sure the committee will recommend that.
Other comments specific to John's amendment? Yep, Counselor Cushing.
So pretty clear, I don't like the specific language. Frankly, I think we can make an amendment that says what we want it to say without any ambiguity. But what I'm hearing from Autumn is that it could become ambiguous the other way. So, but I think this is clearly a compromise, which would get my vote, even though I don't like moratoriums. But I think that what we have accomplished in this case is we brought people together. Everybody's a little unhappy, which is a good thing, and everybody is a little happy. That's a good thing. And then we put it back to the folks who pay attention to this stuff and the details. And I think hopefully we can come up with some changes that honor the original work of turning this into a light industrial zone and reflect some of our current needs or priorities. But I want to make a broad point about the issue of precedent, that we come here, I think, for example, I'm sure that, to say with all due respect, Karen, that our current town planner doesn't like it, I think that's fair. But we have a history and a process and knowledgeable people at the time. Yeah, she's an expert, and I would assume that we had a town planner before her who was an expert. But right, so, but to put it in another sense, that the history of these decisions, people rely on and move forward, right? We just had in this country like 50 years of precedent overturned by a small group of guys who thought that women shouldn't have the right over their own bodies. Nobody liked that. The point I'm making is that these these things, we can change them over time, but we absolutely have to be sensitive to the fact that, particularly with land group use, you want to talk to somebody who's got a long view of things, talk to a guy who runs a tree farm, okay? That this stuff takes time over a long period of time, and we should be very, very careful when we go retrospectively and change it. So my hope in this was that we could honor that principle and we could do something that would reflect the current situation. And I believe your amendment does that. Without that amendment, this does not get my vote.
Other comments specific to John's amendment? I have some thoughts too. And so maybe I'll jump in here. And then if anyone else wants to go before I call the vote, just let me know. But what I appreciate first and foremost is that John recognizes that 90 days is not a lot of time, and that was already a compromise. We brought it down from its original proposal to 90 days. And so I think John did a really good job of taking a look at that time frame and saying, this is something that we can accomplish in the time frame that we've given ourselves. And so I appreciate that about this. I also appreciate the time that Councillor Anderson and Councillor Cushing put into meeting with the various stakeholders. I feel like this is a very well-rounded attempt at local government. I mean, this has been put before the public multiple times now and given public notice, but well beyond us sitting here and making the decisions, councilors put boots on the ground and really put in the work to arrive at some kind of solution that would be amenable to both parties. And so for that reason, I will be supporting John's amendment this evening. Other comments on John's amendment? Karen?
I'm just looking at all the other uses and I'm just curious how you landed at these two. And I look at other ones that would maybe make more noise or have lights on 24/7. And I guess, and that's where I'm wondering how we just landed with these two. So when I look at like motor vehicle repair and service, and then like things like that, I mean, heavy equipment sales, and that's loud. There's going to be lights, and I don't know, in like a junkyard, if that's 24/hour, 24/7, I think, and you only chose a couple, and I think I just want to understand how we got to those, but not those.
So it came from asking the stakeholders through the conversation that Councillor Cushing and I had with many residents and the landowners. I think the conclusion was the real problem here is the fact that there is a 24/7 trucking terminal coming, and from their perspective, it has implications to their quality of life, and that's really their top concern at this moment. And so that was the easy one. That was the one I was originally just planning to propose that, but I did want to consult with staff before I put this forward and ask if there were any other additional uses that they would recommend to be as a part of this. And that's where it was just the cannabis ones, because that's already been discussed at long range, and that was the only item that also came up. So I agree with you, Karen, that there are other things that can probably get reviewed. I don't think it can be done in 90 days, but I think this will hopefully prompt the conversation to start that process.
Yeah, Scott, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, and to clarify, it's a tough decision, because I sympathize with both sides. But he made an investment, the town council made a whole study and everything on this area, what to do with it. It was Beach Ridge Speedway, you talk about noise, I grew up on First Avenue off of Maple Avenue, Green Acres, I could hear it, hey, you can hear it, or down at Ferry Beach. You could, when it was running at night. I admit that was just weekends, usually maybe Thursday night one, I think they had. And it would just be for the, 5 months out of the year or something. A trucking terminal 24/7. I'm just wondering on this amendment, it's just trucking terminal, so you wouldn't be able to put a trucking terminal in 24/7, because that seems to be the big issue, I think, with the homeowners, is the 24/7 at night with the noises. A lot of businesses, wholesale, truck sales or something is usually just a daytime job. Most of them are daytime. A lot of businesses are 9 to 5 or 8 to 4. But we approved it to be an industrial zone. They did a whole big long-range plan to do this. And he invested in it on that plan. And, and now you're gonna hold him up. And it's like, if anything, you gotta hold up FedEx then too. I mean, you say you can't. Well, if you can't, and you've already let the cat out of the bag, you've already approved this is done deal, it's been going on for years. How can you now say to him that's in the same parcel of land, really? Matter of fact, FedEx abuts the property owners, and they, in the long range plan thing, they even gave 100-foot buffer for no development within 100 feet of their property. The council before thought of they got it, their special committees. We have all these special committees, and maybe it shouldn't be special committees. Maybe you're trying to appease everybody, but maybe it should be just come here and it is what it is. But I think we just have to, see what happens with the FedEx thing, and I hope that he would try to appease. Maybe, I don't know what you got from him, what he plans to put in there. Is it 24/7? So the moratorium right now with your amendment is basically, it's 90 days before he can have a trucking terminal go in.
It would be 90 days for the process to work itself out to determine what changes, if anything, happen in our ordinance related to trucking terminals and cannabis. So,
but anything else he could start process on.
Yep.
No?
Well, and what I would like to say, though, Scott, in response to some of your feedback, which I think is very fair, is that, policy making is a challenge, and sometimes there are consequences, and you don't know those consequences until they play out. And I think what we've seen is the consequences of really great work happening, but perhaps some things that were overlooked, like having performance standards in there, because there are portions of the ordinance where there are certain uses that have performance standards related to the concerns that the residents have expressed. So I think this is not a criticism of anybody who is involved in the process. It's just, this stuff is hard and it doesn't always go right. But I think it's our obligation when we have new information before us, which is what we have now, as things are changing, to ask ourselves, is this still what the community wants? And is this still the right thing? And so this 90-day moratorium gives our committees and the council the opportunity to ask those questions, to listen more to residents, and ultimately either say, yeah, this was right, this is what we want it to be, or maybe, but some tweaks, or maybe there's these uses don't belong there. But again, the process needs to work itself out. And what I've heard from the residents is they are very concerned with what's already happened there, and they just don't want to add insult to injury. And so the question I'm looking to understand is, by proliferating the ordinance as we have it, are we adding insult to injury? And if we have an opportunity to, you know, make adjustments that again could still allow for trucking terminals, but also provide better, you know, protections to our residents, we should take the time, 90 days, which really isn't long. I think I can guarantee you soon we'll be here and being like, gosh,
Yeah.
that was quick. It's already in front of us. So I think it will go by very, very fast. And I think we'll get what we need. And, you know, hopefully everybody will, you know, get a little bit of something out of this process.
Great. Thanks, John. With that, I'm going to go ahead and call the vote on John's amendment. All those in favor of the amendment as presented? All those opposed? Okay, the amendment passes. So now we return to the main motion as amended. Is there additional council discussion for consideration?
I just want to really thank Danny for coming forward and sharing your concerns and sitting at the table with the residents and compromising, and Denise for being such a champion for the residents in that area. You know, I think both of you guys coming together over the next couple months as we work through this and helping us get it right so that everybody benefits, it will be critical. And, you know, I hope this passes so that we can continue this conversation and work together to get something better for all of us.
Additional council comments? Yep, Councilor Cushing?
I'm going to vote for this. I am a fan of not letting better be the enemy of good. I think that, as I said before, I would have been happier with more precise language. But I think this moves us in the right direction. But I want to be clear, it's a compromise for me. I know it's a compromise for Mr. Dickinson. I know it's a compromise for Denise. So that generally is a sign that perhaps the sausage is going to taste okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? With that, I will go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Moving on to new business, order number 24-125, first reading and schedule a second reading on the 2025 bond order for municipal and school capital improvements. And we have Mr. Kildow, our finance director, here with us. Welcome.
Thank you. This is somewhat of a routine matter. We in the past had brought forth bond issue requests annually, and we kind of got off schedule with staff changes and various issues that you all have heard about previously. So, but we're back 14 months after the last one, so we're almost back on schedule. This is a general obligation bond issue. Excuse me. The projects that we're bonding total $3,883,505, and it is a split between the town and school capital. This one's weighted a little heavier towards the school side. Liam, can you pull up that projects list? And we can look at the list of projects, how they no, it's the spreadsheet, the colored spreadsheet. Okay, well, I'll speak for mine then. So the projects for the town total 1.3 million, 1,329,000, and the school projects total 2,554,000. So that's the split between the funding of the projects. Included in the 3.8 million is 2 land purchases that, yeah, that's the one I was looking for. Thank you. if you could scroll down just towards the bottom there, those last two projects are off of the land bond issue from 2019, and those, as you're well aware, have previously gone to voter authorization. So with respect to those projects, at second read, you would just be authorizing issuing the bond against those in the bond market. We can speak to the schedule now, if we could flip over to the proposed schedule. Obviously, this is first read tonight. We'll be back next meeting for the second read. We're planning on going to market in late January, early February. February 4th. Our bond counsel says that the January effect is there aren't many people out there in the market selling bonds, so we typically get a little better rate the earlier in the year, as opposed to summer when people start kind of kicking up their projects. So we'll see how that plays out. Fed cut interest rates 25 basis points today, so there's another factor towards the sale. So this is going to be an interesting sale to see how what kind of interest rate we get on our GO bonds. And then the 20th would be when we get our money actually in the bank account. So that's kind of an overview. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Norm. Does anyone have any questions for Norm? Okay, looks like we're all set. Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
thanks.
There is opportunity for public comment. For the people who are watching, the room is now empty. Everyone has departed and there's no one online. So I will close public comment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Any discussion? Yes,
Yeah,
John.
I just want to also say and share, and I was going to wait for counselor comments, but it kind of relates to this. When we met with finance and we looked at the audit, our unassigned fund balance is now at 14.5%. It's historically been probably closer to 10%. And so we changed our fiscal policy last year to try and get closer to what our bond rating agencies are looking for, which is for towns and municipalities to be at 16.6%. So we're well on our way. So my hope is, as we work through issuing these, maybe hopefully at some point we can get an upgrade in our rating, which will just help with, saving taxpayer dollars if we're able to do that, but also with a school potentially coming down the road, that would be great. And I think we're also positioned well to continue to see that increase. And a lot of that is because of the highest liability that we had. That was one reason why it went up so much. And we'll have another year of that with this fiscal year, in addition to having probably a lot of overlay to give back to unassigned. We did the reval, and so we put a lot of money aside for the assessor to, deal with any contested evaluations. And because it was a big reval year, we gave him more money than we would usually, and thinking we were going to get a lot of people coming, and that just hasn't panned out. So all in all, things are looking really good from a unassigned fund balance perspective, that as we go to market for bonds and as we work with our bond agencies, hopefully we'll just continue to get better.
Thank you, John. With that, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Show that as unanimous. Thank you. Order number 24-126 is act to authorize the town manager to sign documents authorizing acceptance of $4,022 or any portion thereof to be placed in the asset forfeiture account. This money is the police department's equitable share for its contribution to the investigation of criminal cases. Tom.
Yeah, not much to add. I think the title really speaks to it. Our police department was involved in a matter that, among other things, I believe there was some U.S. currency and or products. I'm not exactly sure what produced this, but as part of our involvement, we share in a portion of those seized assets. These assets are governed by federal laws in terms of what they can be used for. We highly recommend that you accept these so we can bring them for good use here.
Thank you. Public comment? Do I have a motion?
Move.
Do I have a second? Second from Bill, thank you. Any comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor? Great, see that as unanimous. Order number 24-127 is act on the request from the tax collector for a waiver of foreclosure on the property. Do we need to?
I can give a very,
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'll read the whole thing. Sorry, I got myself tangled there for a second. For a waiver of foreclosure on the following property, 332 Garnet Drive, map T002, lot 332, and authorize the town manager to sign the necessary documentation. And now, Tom.
yes, Maine law allows for, actually requires, it's automatic foreclosure for properties for unpaid real estate taxes. In this case, there's property located in the Pinecrest community. This is a 30-year-old or a little older than 30-year-old mobile home. And this is one of the rare cases where it really isn't in our best interest to foreclose on this, just be given the age of the item. I'd also note that it's on leased land, so it really, in many respects, is likely to be a liability to us rather than an asset. And so we look for you to waive the foreclosure in this instance.
Thank you. Public comment? Seeing none, do I have a motion? Any council discussion? Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Order number 24-128 is act on the request pursuant to Title 23 MRSA 3025 and the requirements of Section 4 of the Scarborough Street Acceptance Ordinance to approve the acceptance of public infrastructure as noted and recommended by the town engineer.
Yes, typically Angela Blanchett, town engineer, would introduce this. She's not feeling well these days, so I'm pleased to stand in her place. This is for accepting a portion of Dillon Drive. This is in the Layton Farms subdivision. I believe this is the final piece, and so with this acceptance, all of the infrastructure as part of that public infrastructure as part of that subdivision will now be our responsibility. There is a rigorous process we follow to ensure the roads and all the associated infrastructure are built to our standards, and inspections have been done, and therefore it's in front of you for your consideration.
Perfect. There is opportunity for public comment. Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Any council discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor? I see that as unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Order number 24-129, act on the request to appoint Kristen M. Barth as Registrar of Voters pursuant to Title 21 AMRSA 101.2 with an effective date of January 1st, 2025.
As I mentioned in my manager's report, Title 21 requires that the municipal officers, in this case town council, shall appoint in writing by virtue of this action, a qualified registrar of voters by January 1st of each odd number year. With Tony Justice currently holding that position, and our intent to have Kristen Barth take over the town clerk responsibilities. We're here before you, having you officially make this appointment, so we're in a position to make that transition at the first of the month.
Great, thank you, Tom. Public comment? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Any council discussion? Yeah, Scott.
I'd like to know if Tody approves.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
End of an era. With that, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Perfect, that's unanimous. Thank you. Item 9 is non-action items. We do not have any non-action items this evening. Item 10 is standing and special committee reports and liaison reports. Anyone like to get us started? Counselor Anderson?
Yep, so finance had our first meeting. We reviewed the audit and again talked about the unassigned fund balance, which is great news. We also discussed our goals for next year. We might have another meeting, I think, before our council goal setting, so we might refine them, but in general, we talked more about process changes and ways we may want to approach the 2026 budget process. We talked about reassessing the downtown TIF and just really just looking at boundary, but also how much we're capturing and what we want to use for any money that we're shielding. And so again, that's an area we might want to explore. We also talked about trying to do more with grants and fees as a means to offset property taxes. And then we did have some discussion on the school and parallel facilities planning. Based on that conversation, we didn't feel like it was probably a finance committee goal, but I'm going to just move it forward and share as we work through goals based on the conversation that we had and, you know, how that might shape into something we might want to discuss at our goal setting. At our next finance meeting, we are asking the sustainability committee to come and talk about the sustainability reserve account. So they had proposed that probably many years and
Multiple years,
and we
many
never
years in
took
a
it up.
row.
And while we have this tiny window before our agenda gets filled up, I figured we'll go quickly. I know, April, you were the former
Liaison to that
liaison, so
committee,
you're
yeah.
welcome to come if you
I would.
want to be there to provide more background and context. And I don't remember
I'd be happy to.
who the new sustainability person is, if it's Bill or
I believe it's Bill.
Bill. Okay, so if you would like to attend, that would be great. But that's the only thing we have right now on the agenda, and that'll be on July 9th at 5 o'clock.
January.
January 9th.
Y'all are skipping the summer.
Wherever, at some point.
Other committee reports. Yeah, Karen, go ahead. Thank you.
Sure. So I just wanted to note that the ordinance committee is going to be meeting the second Wednesdays at 5 PM. And then the appointments and negotiations will be just before that, at 4. I believe Bill is the chair of that one, right?
Yes.
Appointments and negotiations. Yeah, and that's why I was emailing Kristen this week, and we still need more applications, because if we remember, we created our new ordinance where people are timing out. So we do have applications, but it would be nice to see more and less of the same people throughout the committees. So I've already asked a couple people to apply. If anyone here knows people, any of the committees, we could use some more. Thanks.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Which committees are the ones that are most open right now, or because I keep telling people to apply, but
Every committee is going to have an opening because of the new rule.
Yeah.
Where people are timing out. I feel like every committee at least has one person timing out. We just have some bigger committees that have positions open, like there's a planning board opening and long-range planning and things like that. Yep.
Yeah, good question. So if you're interested in serving the community, now's the time to get your application in. Other council committee updates? Councilor
Yes.
Cushing.
The communication committee met. We came up with some limited goals, which relate to Councilor Corner. The first was to enhance communication, identify and enhance communication strategies that measurably increase the public's engagement and understanding of critical issues. By way of example, we looked at the success of the communication around the reval and said, gee, what can we learn from that? How can we apply these things to other things? So that is one thing we're going to focus on. Improve town council and town communications to enhance understanding of councilors' decisions. This was a carryover from last year, and I think some of that relates to the Councilor Corner, and of course, support awareness of the proposed school solution prior to a referendum in November. And then we talked about our favorite topic, which is who writes Councilor Corner. And I think that in general, we agreed that what we were trying to do this year is communicate thematically. And that we talked about organizing our communication around the vision statement in the comprehensive plan, and then drilling down further as those statements apply to some subtopics. So by way of example, growth seems to pop up everywhere with traffic and taxation and so forth. All these things are related. So the goal would be to sort of pick one channel and then make suggested topics for which you can all sign up for, or you could propose alternative contracts. But of course, we want to be clear that anybody who wants to go rogue has the perfect right to do that. Okay, but our hope would be that we might be able to use that format to sort of rinse rather and repeat around some fundamental themes in the message. I accurately expressed that? Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Any other council updates? Yeah, Bill.
I have the Board of Education and I was in touch with the liaison to the town council on the school board, Jillian Trapani Huff. And we agreed that we would periodically exchange communications on what of significance was going on at the school board. And I reporting to her what's of significance going on. I sent her a report on our last meeting. So that seemed to be a satisfactory arrangement. The SBAC 2 is the ad hoc committee set up by the school board to analyze the 4 proposals that the first committee settled on. It's an aggressive schedule. It calls for meeting almost every week for more hours than I sleep. So that will be a lot of work. April is with me on this one. I was with the meetings we held so far. I've been impressed by the committee's hard work and the consultants, Harriman's hard work. A lot of effort is going into trying to get this right. Thoughtful comments. I communicated to the superintendent and the chair that they needed to manage their agenda more tightly, or else people will lose interest in 3 and 4 hour meetings. And that I think is important. So they're aware of that. I could not hear, and I don't have a hearing problem. And more than half of what was said at the meeting, just because of the lack of good acoustics. So I also have the Maine Municipal Association with Nick Cloutier. We did speak, and the process of proposed legislation review, which is what we're talking about here, is to begin shortly, January. Everything, there's a schedule that the proposed bills have to be in. And he and I will confer. He's going to take the first crack, and then he'll communicate to me his sense of concern or interest. And then I'll be communicating that to all of you.
Okay, thank you. Any other committee updates? Okay, council member comments? Yes, John.
Yeah. I just want to, one, acknowledge and thank Councilor Cushing for joining me in the resident and landowner forum that we had last week. You know, it's definitely a heated, emotionally charged thing when you're talking about, you know, how everyone felt about the situation. But he was a master at, you know, in my opinion, facilitating, keeping everybody grounded. You know, he talks a lot about common speak and just trying not to complicate things, which I like to complicate things. And so he definitely helped keep things focused. So I just really want to thank you for, you know, being there as a partner and really kind of taking ownership of the situation and getting us to where we got to today. So I appreciate that. And then I also just want to say, Councilor Scyther and I went to Stacks to discuss goal setting. We approved that a few weeks ago. If you haven't been, I highly recommend going and getting the chicken and waffles. The food was so good. It was like literally flying out of April's mouth.
I did drop.
And she was catching it. And so
I caught it like a ninja.
yeah. So, you know.
Thank you for sharing that story.
It's that good. So highly recommend you go there.
I was going to say nice things about Counselor Anderson, but I changed my mind. For council comment, other counselor comments. So I will just say, I appreciate the response for people who have already sent me some of their ideas on goal setting. I hope that the timeline that John and I set up will work for most, if not everybody. I know that it's a big time commitment. And so I really appreciate everyone's attention to that. To Counselor Cushing's point, the more of this that we kind of get done and refine and suggestions that come to John and I so that we can put them in a way that is easy to digest, when we sit down together for that actual goal setting session, the better we will have set ourselves up for success for that meeting. And so I appreciate everyone sending me their things in advance. One last reminder that Tom's evaluation is due to Liam by Friday, the Monday. Monday. I have not done mine either, full disclosure. So now I know I have till Monday. But if you could get those done, I'm sure Liam would appreciate that. Next counselor comment, I just want to make sure that Counselor Fellows knows that we are all missing him tonight, thinking about him and his family, and we can't wait to have him rejoin our crew in the new year. And then with that, other counselor comments? Yeah.
Chiefs up on their offer.
Yeah.
Of meeting with them. And I want to shout out to them. We have two highly
Yes, we do.
competent gentlemen. That what struck me was they knew everybody in the building and they knew them by their first name. And they were confident in discussing in detail issues that came up in the course of it. So the tour opens your eyes to the scope of activity that takes place to properly have a highly competent fire department or a highly competent police department. It was really quite an interesting experience. And one I hadn't done, probably 10 years ago was the last time I did that sort of thing. So it was very welcome.
Great. Thanks, Bill. My last comment would just be to wish everyone a very joyful and safe holiday season and a new year. And I'm just really excited and proud to serve the town. And so I can't wait for what the new year will bring. Order number 24-120 is act on the request for executive session pursuant to MRSA Title I 4056D regarding labor negotiations between the town of Scarborough and the Public Works Teamsters Union Local number 340. This was tabled from a prior meeting, so we will be taking this up this evening. Just so that everyone is aware, we will adjourn from the executive session, so we will not be returning to public chambers after this is over. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Great. Thank you, everyone.